Hey everybody, Ms. Dietrich here. We're going to take a look at some of the questions on the quiz 7A. The first question is a little bit tricky. It says, what is the value of the expression? They give you this, and you really have to be careful to follow order of operations. So we would want to think, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and go through the order of operations to make sure we're not doing anything out of order. Remember, you don't want to put your socks on before you put your shoes on. All right, so if we look here, we do have a set of parentheses, and that's what this stands for, the P. And we have two operations within the parentheses. We have an exponent, and then we have add. So what do you do first out of those two? Well, we would always do an exponent before we add. So let's do that first. We're doing 2 cubed. Now remember, 2 cubed does not mean 6. It means 2 as a factor 3 times. So if we do that off to the side and think about what that's equal to, we know that 2 times 2 is equal to 4, and we know that 4 times 2 is equal to 8. So we're going to rethink this as 8 and rewrite everything that's left. So we have 3 squared. This dot means times. And then we just simplified that and got 8. And now we have plus 4. And then we have to divide that. That's what this bar means. Divide that by 2 squared, which that's easy enough. That's mental math. That means 2 times 2, or 2 is a factor twice, which would be 4. All right, so next, let's evaluate what we need to do. We are still in progress with the parentheses. We have an operation within the parentheses, so we have to finish that. This plus this would be 12. And let's write everything that's left. So we have the 3 squared, we're multiplying, and we're dividing that by 4. All right, so next we have to think about, what does 3 squared mean? 3 squared does not mean 6. It means 3 is a factor twice. So that would be 9. This times this is 9. 9 times 12, and divide that by 4. All right, so the only thing left you have to do is find what 9 times 12 is, come up with a product, and if you don't know it in your head, then do the algorithm off to the side, get that product. And then whatever that is, you have to divide that by 4. That's what the fraction bar means. So take this number, put it in here, divide it by 4, and hopefully you'll see one of these answer choices. All right, let's move on to number 2. It says, which expression is equivalent to the phrase below? The quotient of the sum of 2t and 2 and twice the cube of s. Now, one of the things I can tell you is very helpful is if you know what cube means. What exponent? What does that look like? Doesn't cube mean 3 dimensions? Therefore, we're looking at an exponent of 3. So if you have an exponent, you have some letter, and then we're looking for a 3. Now I see a 2 here, and I see a 2 here. So that's probably a no. This is probably a no. And this is probably a no, just because it has the wrong exponent. That would be true if it said squared, then those might be contenders. All right, so now let's make sure we know what quotient means. Quotient means divide. Now we're going to have some stuff above the fraction bar, and what we're dividing it by is the stuff below the fraction bar, and that's kind of how they're representing it here in our answer choices that are left, because we're going to take a closer look at B, and we're going to take a closer look at D. All right, so then they say the sum of 2t and 2. Now remember, sum means add. So these two things have to be added together in whichever choice you pick, and you have to understand what twice means. Twice the cube. Look in your notes because we did write that down. That does mean a particular operation and by a particular number. All right, let's take a look at number 3. It says, which expression is equivalent to 9 times 9m plus 3t? In class, we learned that you can distribute this, because this really means 9 groups of 9 monkeys plus 3 turtles. So if we distribute this, this times this would be 81 monkeys. So that eliminates choice A, that eliminates choice C. The only thing left you have to do is figure out what 9 times 3 turtles would be. If you have 9 groups of 3 turtles, how many turtles do you have altogether? So that's just 9 times 3t. So look in the lineup here and pick the answer from there. All right, number 4, we have to know that we're talking about a flip-flop word here, 3 fewer. Whenever you see that represented as fewer, because 3 minus is different than 3 fewer, that means you're subtracting 3 from something. So figure out what the something is by reading this part again. Question number 5 says Ken and Tammy are making necklaces. Ken makes 25 necklaces. So let's write down who we're talking about here. We're talking about Ken. Let's use a K for Ken, and we'll use a T for Tammy. All right, so they tell us that he made 25 necklaces. Let's put that number here. And they're telling us that Tammy makes M more necklaces than Ken. So sometimes it's good to even think about a hypothetical number. What if it was 10 more necklaces? Wouldn't we be adding 10 and 25 to get how many necklaces she made? But we don't know it's 10, but we know we would be adding it to Ken's number to get her number. So that's what you want to think about. We're not using 10, we're going to be using M. So M plus 25, right? Wouldn't that give us Tammy? All right, now it does say which expression represents the total number of necklaces Ken and Tammy made. So you're going to have an expression for Tammy, and to get the total necklaces that both of them made, you have to add that to this, right? So look in the lineup and pick the one that you think will work. All right, for number 6, we have another one of those flip-flop words that we have to be careful. It says the computer club has 4 fewer than twice the number of students in band. We're using the variable n to represent the number of students in the band, which expression gives the number of students in computer club. Now remember, 4 fewer, that's one of those things where you're going to be subtracting 4 from something. So figure out what the something is. Look in your notes, because we did write notes down about what this means. We wrote notes about what operation it means and by what number. And if you don't know, think deeply about that, because I think you'll be able to figure it out. All right, and lastly, number 7, they want to know which is the coefficient of the expression. So in class, we talked about how a coefficient is a number that's being multiplied with a variable. So if we use this other random example, if we were asked to find the coefficient of this example, first we'd find the variable, which is the letter that holds the place of a number, and then you see what's being multiplied with it, or the number that's in front of it. And in this case, it's 8. So if this same question was being asked of this expression, then I would choose 8. So ask yourself which is the coefficient in this example and pick the letter that goes with it. All right, folks, good luck finishing up the quiz. Make sure before you hit the submit button, double check all your answers to make sure that you bubbled everything correctly.